Hey fellow babies, welcome back to this week's Pachter Factor. I hope you are watching this as a Patreon patron on SIFTD.net. If you are not watching on SIFTD, you're getting it a week late for free on YouTube, which is cool. There's a new wrinkle though, and we've been asking you guys for a long time to link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch Prime account, and then we obviously get paid for that, but Twitch has added a benefit. If you link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch Prime account, you get Pachter Factor a week early. You get it at the same time as SIFTD patrons. So you can bypass the week wait for YouTube. It costs you nothing if you're already paying for Amazon Prime. So we're looking forward to a little bit more revenue so Shane can keep eating macaroni and cheese out of the box. He's been living on fumes for the last several months. We're dropping off on this Twitch Prime linkage. So if you're an Amazon Prime customer, and there are 65 million households in America that are, it's actually more like 90. I'm sorry, I gave the wrong number. 90 million. That's literally everybody. It is not hard to link your Amazon Prime account to Twitch Prime. We get a couple bucks a month, and we're going to reward you if you do that by getting you Pachter Factor at the same time as SIFTD patrons. Our first question from YouTube, from Chase Case. What is the impact of Dan Houser leaving Rockstar? Take-Two's stock fell in the news, and he's been integral in creating the stories and settings for most of its games. Do you think he'll return to video games, do something else, or retire with a mountain of money? I've probably met Dan once, maybe twice. I don't talk to him much. I used to talk to Sam infrequently, but probably a dozen times. I think I said something critical about them back with Hot Coffee in 2005, and they kind of cut me off, and so I haven't really spoken to a Houser in a long time. I have talked to a lot of employees at Rockstar about the relative contribution of the guys, and the truth is there were 3 people at Rockstar that the company felt were really integral to getting games out, and the 3 were Sam Houser, Dan Houser, the younger brother. Sam is 48, I think, and Dan is 46, give or take, but a couple of years apart. And the third guy is Les Benzie. He's about the same age. Those 3 guys were the 3 founders of Rockstar. I mean, maybe the Housers nominally, but Les was there. Les ran studios at Rockstar. Les ran Rockstar North, boots on the ground. And Les left the company in early 15. He took a leave of absence, a sabbatical. The company talked about it, and it was cool. And I think he literally was married, has a couple of kids, and moved his family to Malibu, and he was just checking out for a while. Came back, and somehow there was a falling out, and he left the company. He sued. Nothing to do with Take-Two. He and the Housers had a falling out. I'm not sure what it's about. So that left Dan and Sam, and I think a lot of people in early 16, when Les got fired, were really worried about Red Dead, and they were really worried that maybe Red Dead couldn't get done. Red Dead, of course, came out in September, I think it was, or October of 2018, and was, top rated game, I'm sure top 10 of all time. Certainly, way up, it was a 97 rating or 96 rating or something, really amazing game. So people stopped worrying about Les's contribution. So I would say the Housers are pretty damn good. And everybody I've ever talked to about Take-Two has called out Sam as being the creative genius of the duo. No one has ever said a bad word about Dan. So it's not like Dan's a slug. Dan's great too, but if you ever ask anybody who works there, who's the person that really is responsible, the description I get the most frequently about Sam is he creates the vibe of a Rockstar game. And I can't define that. I mean, I understand what it means, but there's just this whole feel to a Rockstar game, and you know it if you play them. You can say Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead are completely different genres and completely different settings, but they have the same vibe. And I gotta say, very few of you watching this show are old enough to remember games like Manhunt and Max Payne and Midnight Club. They had that vibe too. I'd say the only one that didn't have that vibe was probably L.A. Noire, and that was kind of done outside of the Rockstar team, but they brought it in-house. If there is a next one, it'll be made by those guys. So there's something to it. And I don't know, I know that Dan is listed as creative director. I am certain Dan puts pencil to paper and writes the dialogue and writes kind of the whole level progression and the cutscenes and where things happen. but Sam is integrally involved. And my understanding is Sam is the hands-on guy. So my impression of the two is Sam is the more dominant, and I'm saying this without, honestly, I don't know. It's not like I've watched them make a game, so I don't know. But Sam is the older brother, and if you have family and you have an older brother, you understand. If you are the older brother, you understand. One is just slightly more dominant, and so, I'm not going to go as far as to say Sam is 75% of the effort and Dan is 25, but I think Sam is more than 50 and Dan is less than 50. So what does Dan's loss mean? It's a big blow. I mean, Take-Two was paying the three guys, Les Benzies and the Hausers, about 50% of profit from the Rockstar division for keeping that thing going. And I don't question Take-Two paying them that at all, because when you sell 120 million copies of GTA, and just to put that in perspective, that's 3 times the best-selling game in history. So they're 3 times bigger than I think Mario Kart 8 is probably 40 million. That's just incredible. This is like making a $6 billion movie, when the number one movie of all time is Avengers at 2.5. These guys are incredible. And you absolutely pay them whatever the hell it takes to keep them happy. And so Take-Two treats the Hausers as if they're an external studio and gives them a big chunk of profit because they're worth it. And so again, no criticism of the Hausers or the company for doing that. I think Sam is really smart. And I got to say, my interactions with him, he's wicked smart. I mean, he really is. I think Sam is going to get it done. I don't think Dan left the planet. I think Dan is still around. I think they can have dinner. I think Sam can say to Dan, what do you think about this for the next GTA? And Dan's going to say, hey, that's a good idea, but how about that? And I think that he'll still have input. I just don't think the guy's working anymore. So the answer to your question is no, I do not think he's starting a rival studio. I think that's a 0 probability. If you do the math on Take-Two profits for the last several years, they made at least $1.5 billion on Rockstar. So they made at least $750 million in payments to the 3 people. So Dan, God knows how much he paid in taxes and how much he spent, but he's got $100 million in the bank. And I don't know about you, but $100 million is more than I need. So I think what probably happened is the guy took a break. They called it a leave of absence. I do not know why. I don't want to cast any aspersions on the guy. Sounds to me like a personal problem, and it could have been a family issue, illness, who knows. But, I think he had his 9 months off. He got his head clear, and he realized life is good without showing up every day and worrying about, sweating the details of dialogue and voice acting and level design of a game and developers who can't finish on time. And I think he just is taking a break. And I don't think he's coming back, but I don't know the guy. So is it a blow that Take-Two can't overcome? Probably not. Will it slow down the development of games? There's a distinct possibility that games come out slower. And let's just go with my math. Then I said the outside range would be Sam is 75% and Dan is 25%. That's making Dan as unimportant as I could possibly make him, and I don't know what it is. It could be 51-49. But let's say it's 75-25. That means that Sam now has to do 100% of the work when he used to only have to do 75%, which adds 1/3 to his burden. So 25 is 1/3 of 75. So if they were working on games and getting them out every 6 years, and Sam has to work an extra 1/3, maybe they go to 8 years. I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. So does that mean that the next GTA gets delayed? Yeah, I think it probably does. But delayed compared to what? We never knew when it was coming out anyway. The reality of Take-Two is they have 2 big divisions and 1 up-and-coming division, private division. But the 2 divisions, 2K and Rockstar, the 2K guys are pretty productive. You get an NBA game, a WWE game every year. We can argue about quality, but the NBA games have been phenomenal. You get a Borderlands occasionally, you get a BioShock occasionally, you get a Mafia occasionally, XCOM, Civilization. They have a lot of titles that sell a lot of units at 2K. On the Rockstar side, and you can take a pencil and write this stuff down, I'm close enough on the years here. They've had Bully, which I think came out in 2007, Manhunt in 2008, and GTA in 2008. Midnight Club in 2009, Red Dead Redemption in 2010, LA Noire in 11, Max Payne in 12, GTA in 13, and then nothing for 5 years. And then Red Dead came out in 18, and nothing in 19 from Rockstar, and looking like nothing in 20. So what happened? Do you think they're never working on Bully, Manhunt, Midnight Club, LA Noire, Max Payne? That's not possible. They might not make another Manhunt, I don't know, but I think that was a really cool game. I don't know if you played it, it was freaking awesome. They might not make another LA Noire, but I think they will. They might be a different city, it might be Chicago Noir or New York Noir, but I think they're going to do it. Max Payne for sure they're making. Bully I'm pretty sure they're making. Midnight Club I'm pretty sure they're making. So what happened? What happened is they just got backed up. Part of it might be Les Benzi's leaving. Part of it might be Dan Houser's leave of absence. But I actually think Rockstar, with its God knows how many developers, last I heard them say officially it was 900, but someone yesterday said 2,000, so somewhere in there. Those people are not slugs. They're trying, and they're hard at work on these games. So I think they got backed up. I think the game development cycle at Rockstar went from 3 to 5 years to 6 to 10 years. But honestly, I think they have Bully queued up. I think that's a 2021 title. I think they have Midnight Club queued up. I think they have Max Payne queued up, LA Noire, and then they'll get another GTA out. And so, to be honest with you, I could see a game a year for the next 5 years, just not one in 20. So I think Dan leaving pushed Bully out of 2020 and into 2021. And I'm saying Bully because we saw an advertisement in April of 19. Voice actors were wanted for Bully. So they were working on it. And my guess is Dan left around that time, and Dan is the guy who writes the dialogue. So kind of hard to hire voice actors and have them record dialogue if it's not written. So it got put on hold. And now he's not coming back, and Sam has to write the dialogue, or Sam has to get somebody to do it. And they're going to do it. And so Bully's coming out next year. The open question is, next year being 21, the open question is there a game in 22 and another one in 23, another one in 24? I think probably there will be, because that's a lot of years. And I think Sam obviously doesn't code. He doesn't write these games himself. He's going to hire people, but is Sam going to trust the new hire as much as he trusts his family? Probably not. Of course you trust your sibling more than you trust other people. So it might take a year to get this stuff sorted out, but I think Take-Two is going to be back on track. The problem with the stock is it did put a hole in their schedule. They have to have a tough comparison to last year's Borderlands, and they don't have a giant game coming out this year, so they have a big hole in their schedule, and the stock went down on that. So I really think it's that simple. I do think Dan is a big loss. He is not the biggest loss. Sam would be the biggest loss. And as I said at the outset, they have survived the departure of Les Benzies, and somehow Red Dead got finished, and it was great. And it got finished 2.5 years after Les left, and 3 years after Les took a leave of absence. So, plenty of work happened without Les's oversight, and the game is great, and Les is really amazing. Our next question from SIFTD, from Raphael Michael. Good day, Mr. Pachter. PlayStation recently published a survey gauging interest in remote play running on Nintendo Switch. What are the chances of this happening? What would the implications be for both companies? Interestingly, I don't think it matters if it's running on a Switch or it's running on any screen. So I'd say the implication for Nintendo is very small. Maybe they're getting paid to allow it to happen, but honestly, if you can play it on a Switch, play it on your phone. Like, really, does it make that much difference? The Switch screen is like, that much bigger. Play it on your tablet screen is bigger. Play it on your PC. Your PC screen is much bigger. Play it on your television. The implication for Nintendo is small. I'm sure that Sony's paying a small royalty, but it's not going to make a meaningful difference in Nintendo's world. The reason that I think this is important is this tells you that when Sony bought Gaikai and OnLive, and then they rolled out PlayStation Now, they were deadly serious about this becoming a business. And I think that Sony sees that Google Stadia is going to compete against console owners, against console manufacturers. And Google Stadia is going to try to keep consumers from buying a console, saying you can save the $300 or $400 or $500 on the console, and you can just play a streaming game on any device, any screen. I think Sony's trying to say you can do that too. So if you buy the console, you can still play on your phone, you can still play on your Switch, you can still play on your tablet. Microsoft clearly is doing the same thing. Phil Spencer gave an interview a couple days ago and said that the competition isn't Sony, it's Google and Amazon. And he's talking cloud. Amazon is getting in this business. They haven't announced it yet. They're going to do it. They have to. They're a cloud company. Just like Twitch should have had archived video footage years ago, 20 years ago, and they're doing it now because YouTube is kicking their butts with archived footage. Google Cloud is going to kick Amazon's butt with cloud if they offer stuff like game streaming, and Amazon doesn't. So Amazon has to do it. Microsoft clearly is a cloud company, clearly is going to do it. Game Pass, theoretically works on any PC. Why wouldn't it work on any TV? It will. I mean, just give it time and it will. So bottom line is, I think you're going to get everybody, including Sony, moving into cloud. I think Sony and Microsoft are going to do things just like Shane does with SIFTD. If you link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch Prime account, we'll give you some content earlier, and that's really smart. They're going to say if you buy a PlayStation, you buy an Xbox, we're going to let you stream on any device. So, and probably free. So I think that there are little hooks that Sony and Microsoft can put into their, console sales to get people to buy consoles because they get this ubiquitous, streaming opportunity everywhere. And I think Sony's just proving it works on the Switch, and they're acknowledging that there's 50 million Switches out there, that clearly those 50 million Switch owners have something in common. They all like games. So Sony's going after those guys first, but I think down the line you're going to be able to play any Sony game on any device, any Microsoft game on any device. And the open question is, will we have cross-platform play without owning any console? The answer to that is yes. I don't think immediately, but I think ultimately it's all about just making sure that the people who buy a PlayStation can do whatever their friends who don't have a PlayStation can do, and that's just a smart hook. So I see streaming taking over. I don't think streaming replaces consoles as much as it expands the market for console games. And so ultimately I think you double or triple the number of people playing games, and you probably see a slight decline in console sales, say 25%, but that's just because late adopters of consoles are just buying it to play a game or two. Guys who buy the console in year 7 aren't exactly hardcore gamers, or they would have bought the console 7 years ago. So who's buying a PlayStation 4 in 2020? And that guy is a casual gamer, and if you gave him the opportunity to play all those games without a console, he would take it. So, I frankly think that the opportunity for Sony and Microsoft is exploit the hardcore, give them a lot, give them Game Pass, give them PS Plus, give them free games, give them free music, do whatever. Just like Amazon Prime does. If you're a Prime member, you get free video and you get free music. Why not give them free games too? Coming. So as a gamer, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's great. As a gamer, I will still have a console because I like that experience. And I think the analogy is to like 4K TV. How many people have 4K TV? And it's like probably half of households in the US have them now. And there's no content. Like there's no television broadcast 4K. There's 1 or 2 channels. None of the networks are 4K. But you can watch 4K movies on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. So what the hell? So early adopters will adopt the technology because they can afford it and they like it. Late adopters will do it the cheaper way and watch on a 1080p TV or a cathode ray tube TV and still get the same content. And so again, offering streaming is really all Sony's doing here on the Switch. It's going to benefit Sony by keeping their business relevant for another decade, and I doubt it benefits Nintendo much, but again, I'm sure Nintendo's getting paid something. Our next question from SIFTD from Yakov V. Recently, a developer called Platinum, I remember Platinum Games, posted a Kickstarter for a remaster of The Wonderful 101 for Wii U on Switch. The goal was just $25,000 to distribute the game, but how much do ports and remasters cost to produce? Nintendo gave the IP rights back to Platinum, so now it's coming to non-Nintendo consoles. Was this a smart move? Remastering from Wii U to Switches is virtually nothing. The Switch specs aren't that amazing. I mean, they're good, but the Wii U was pretty good too. You know, my guess is it's $1 million max. As far as Nintendo giving the IP rights back to Platinum, I'm not sure Nintendo ever owned the IP rights. I think Nintendo had an exclusive on the Wii U. My guess is that in exchange for Wonderful 101 coming on Switch, Nintendo said, okay, if you produce it for Switch, then we'll let you out of the balance of your exclusive contract. And I doubt that the game's going to sell particularly well on other consoles anyway. There's just this Japanese vibe to some games. Katamari is like that Final Fantasy is like that. And I really can't explain it. It's an art style and a gameplay feel. And some people love it. I mean, it's like I guess it is a JRPG, but people just love. There is a term called JRPG, and Japanese role-playing games are just different. And I don't know if I can explain it, but they're different. This is a different action game, whatever you call it, just different. And so they tend not to do particularly well outside of Asia. So games like this sell half or 3/4 of their units in Asia and 1/4 in the West. So that, you know, they do okay, but I don't think this is a big needle mover for anybody, and I don't think it really is going to hurt Nintendo to be magnanimous and let them produce the game elsewhere. And like I said, it costs $1 million. If they sell 100,000 on Switch, they're getting their money back. Our last question this week from YouTube, from Disgruntled, as opposed to Disgruntled. By the way, I like the word disgruntled. Look up the word gruntled in the dictionary. So disgruntled means you're unhappy. Gruntled means you're happy. What a funny word. I'm gruntled today. I'm very gruntled. It's one of those little stupid trivia things that nobody uses the word gruntled.
I've never heard anyone.
No, I know. Look it up though. It's really funny. So I'm gruntled today. The ESA recently shared some of the changes it's making for E3 2020, including redecorating the convention center, having more lounge areas, and more on-site streaming and presentations. Do any of these address the real issues of the E3? Sony announced it's skipping the show again. If it won't show up for a console launch year, is it ever going to return? Will it struggle to reach the mainstream without attending E3? If not, does E3 even matter anymore? Sony is just remarkably stupid. I'm sorry. I gotta say, the guy who runs it, Jim Ryan, is wicked smart. I love that guy. He is super smart. He is getting bad advice. His team that is telling him we are going to focus on the consumer and do more events are giving him bad advice. When I say he's smart, I'm going to say he's smart and he's a super capable executive because he's listening to the people around him who tell him to skip E3. They're morons. Sorry, I'm friends with a lot of you guys. Bad call. Bad call. My mom's dead, but she died in 2014. But the only time I ever heard from my mom about what I did was my mom would talk to me every June and go, are you going to this E3 show? It's all over the Today Show. It's all over Good Morning America. It's all over the channel local news, whatever, Channel 5 news. It's all over the NBC Nightly News. Are you going? I used to do a feature with CNBC. They would run their broadcast from the floor of E3. That's every investor in America was watching that show. Bill Griffith, who just retired or sort of retired, he would be there for 3 days. I remember I followed Kaz Hirai one year when Kaz was president of Sony, and it was like, oh my God, mainstream. Everybody in the world knew about E3. So here's Sony, who wants to sell 100 million consoles, 100 million PS5s. Who do they think is buying them? It's the people watching E3, and they're skipping it. Dumb. I don't know what to say. Okay, will that kill E3? It's going to hurt E3. I think that it's one thing to have Microsoft buy Nokia, and then because they own Nokia, they own the rights to the Microsoft Theater, which used to be called the Nokia Theater. So it's one thing for Microsoft to have a theater immediately next door, and for Microsoft to run a parallel event immediately next door. It's another for Electronic Arts to run a parallel event at the same exact dates and be 5 miles away in Hollywood. Like, at least they're there, and they're meeting with people, they have conference rooms, and they're seeing everybody who comes to E3. I don't like that either of those guys pulled off the show floor because I think it diminishes E3, and I think it's important for the publishers and the console makers to support E3. But at least they're tied into the show and they're capitalizing on the publicity and the traffic to have their own events. Sony pulling out completely and doing nothing, I think, let me see if I've been clear here. Dumb, dumb, dumb. And Jim Ryan, you're getting bad advice from your people. This should be the last E3 you skip. You should be back in force. What I don't think any of these big companies appreciate is that the ESA is not just in the business of hosting a show. The ESA is a lobbying organization. So when you get Schwarzenegger versus US and Schwarzenegger versus EMA, Electronic Merchants Association, and they're trying to limit the ability of retailers to sell games to people under 18, you need a lobbying organization to say, you know what, in-game violence is just not any worse than regular old detective shows on TV. And we do have a rating agency, and we do have M-rated games. You can't buy it if you're under 17, stuff like that. And it worked, and they won in the Supreme Court. When you get regulators who say loot boxes are gambling and we're going to outlaw them, maybe we should get rid of loot boxes, but the publishers and the console makers make a lot of money on the in-game purchases, and you need a lobbying organization to deal with that, and that's a widespread problem for them. And if it's not loot boxes, what happens when it's season passes? You know, like your Fortnite season pass, it's like, how do you know if you pay your $10 if you're going to complete the 100 missions and get the 100 V-Bucks and buy the right skins and whatever? You know, maybe the kid's getting ripped off. You know, let's regulate that. So you need the ESA to lobby on your behalf. And I think the publishers that don't support E3, EA, are making a mistake. I think the console manufacturers that don't support them, Microsoft and Sony, are making a mistake. But Sony in particular not being there at all in a console launch year, really dumb. And again, I hope I've been crystal clear. Will ESA survive? You know, I'm hopeful that the new guys that come up are going to be the mobile game makers. You know, I'm hopeful that Zynga starts supporting the ESA. I'm hopeful that Google Stadia starts supporting the ESA, that Twitch supports the ESA, that Amazon supports the ESA. And what's going to happen is if they do, that lobbying is going to favor streaming companies and mobile companies and not console guys. I think E3 matters a lot. It's my favorite show. I think that it's the only place you can go and everybody is there. There are shows like TGS and Gamescom that are good shows, but you don't get the senior executives from the companies, and you certainly don't get the access that you get to everybody that you get at E3. And so I am hopeful Sony recognizes this was a mistake. You know, Jim Ryan really only came in just before last year's E3, so I'm guessing that the decision to pull out was made before Jim was promoted. And I'm amazed that he decided to do it again this year, but that was a mistake. And so let's see if the PS5 launch is a fizzle. Let's see if people wonder what's going on and they're at E3 and the Xbox dominates, and it really, whatever it's called, Series X. Let's just call it the Xbox because I can't deal with all these numbers. But if the Xbox dominates and the PS5 flops, I think you blame it on E3. So I will eat those words and I will say, my God, Sony sold twice as many PS5s as they did PS4s at launch. They're genius. They should never go to E3 again. That's not going to happen. And I'm not going to say it because it's not going to happen. Big mistake. My mom's gone, but you know, my kids, whoever, people who just watch mainstream media should know about it. And I actually think all the questions about, you know, more lounge areas and more streamers, that's the time you want everybody with doing their hands-on unboxing PS5. I mean, everybody should be doing that, and you're not giving them that opportunity. If it's a separate Sony event at GDC, I mean, I guess there will be some streamers there. Mainstream media is not going to be there, not enforced the way they are at E3. You're not getting the same publicity at GDC that you're going to get at E3. Thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor. Again, if you're a Patreon patron, thank you for the patronage, and you're getting this content right away. If you are watching on YouTube, you're not helping us at all, and we don't resent you, but you need to follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. If you are in between, you're not a Patreon patron, but you or your parents have an Amazon Prime account, please link it to your Twitch Prime account. And as a reward, not only will we get paid, but you can watch these shows archived on twitch.tv/Sifted Games. You'll get them the same time as Patreon patrons. So for no cost, you are supporting us. We're getting paid and we're rewarding you. So please consider linking your Twitch Prime account to your Amazon Prime account so we can get a couple bucks a month, and we're rewarding you for doing so. The description of how to do that is right below my picture. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week. I gotta say, the problem with streamers, I don't know if you've been to E3, but the problem with streamers is E3 is pretty crowded. It's not CES level crowded, but it's pretty crowded. And walking down, just navigating the concourse and walking from whatever it's called, the West Wing and the South Hall, West Hall and South Hall, which is weird. Why is it East-West? I always get that screwed up. The South Hall and the West Hall, the concourse is really just crowded. It's, you can walk at a fast pace, but there's a lot of people. And the thing I fucking hate is news crews and streamers, because everybody's stepping back to get a good camera angle on the streamer or the newscaster. And so they're back about 10 feet, and they get pissed at you if you walk in between them. But it's like, fuck them. They're in the middle of a fucking walkway. So I'm hopeful that there's more space that are streamer dedicated so that I don't have to knock these people over. And I got to say, every E3, and you can call me a rude dick, it's fine. You're allowed to. Every E3, I get in somebody's shot. I can't help it. And like when we do it, people get in our shots. Yeah, and you should see when Shannon and I do it, we're like behind the Nintendo booth, off to the side, and the only thing you would be walking toward is the bathroom. Like, we are not in the way of anything. We are nowhere near going from point A to point B. We're in the back where the bathroom is, and people still come by and get pissed over taking up space.